Good. So we're going to start with an introduction to JavaScript. I will need my HTML5 document structure. And so far we know that there is 3 ways of adding JavaScript to our document. The first one is by adding the script inside the body. When we are inside the body, okay, is basically because when we open the page, at the place where we are writing our script, we're going to execute something. For example, I'm going to have a title. Okay. And right after my title, I want to integrate something using JavaScript. Yeah. For example, I want to generate a drop-down menu. Okay, I want to do it right here in this spot. And this drop-down menu will have inside 100 numbers. So the easiest way to do that will be maybe by creating a loop. Okay, so here in this example, I want to have right after the title, I want to have a drop-down menu. Okay, the reasons why we want to use JavaScript are limitless. We don't know why. We're gonna face a problem. We're gonna have some kind of situation in which the best solution will be using JavaScript. Okay, so in the case of writing the JavaScript inside the body, most of the times is because I want this to happen right away on the code. Right after my title, my H1, I want to have a drop-down menu with 100 option values. Right? And the easiest way of doing that is with a loop that is going to do 100 for me. Okay, so I'm going to preview this loop. This loop basically starts from 0, is going to go all the way to 100 times, one at a time, one by one. Okay, I, which is my variable, it's a variable I. In a loop you can either declare var or not. JavaScript is very flexible on that. You can declare your variable first, say var I equals to 0. I'm going to go from 0 to 100. Repeat this one at a time. I plus plus means increment I plus 1, and it will document.write. It will write inside my document an option 100 times, where the value will be equal to I. The first time I will be 0, the second time I will be 1, the third time 2, etc., all the way to 99. Right? And then it's going to print 100 option values. All right. So so again, I will have a title, and then right away I would have 100 options from a drop-down menu, and this is done with the JavaScript. Even Firefox, there it is. I have 100, all the way to 100, right? So JavaScript in this case is making the process of creating this page easier, faster, by adding a loop. Now that's one of the reasons why you will do JavaScript inside the body, to have it done right away. Okay? When you are inside the body, you use document.write, meaning if you want to print something on the screen, document.write, and that is going to be exactly on the place where you call document.write. So JavaScript is executed line by line. Okay? So this is an example, quick example of why we would use it inside the body. We're using a loop, which we're gonna take over again later, how loops work. But it's just to explain why to put inside the body. Now I'm gonna show you what I mean by the code is executed line by line. If I put an alert, which is a box that will pop up, and I say hello world, okay, the alert is before my loop. Okay, remember that every time you code, you write on JavaScript, you have to be inside the script tag. Okay, I cannot have an alert outside the script tag. Here that cannot happen because it's not inside JavaScript. This will not be executed as JavaScript. I have to be inside the script tag whenever I am writing this in the body. Okay, so the first thing to be executed will be the hello world. Once I click on OK on the alert box, then it will continue with the code and generate the dropdown, not before. So if I refresh the page, first I see the hello world, but you see how my dropdown is empty? I click OK, now it is populated. Okay, that is because the code is executed line by line. For example, if I have after the script some paragraph in HTML, this is some paragraph. We will not see the paragraph when the alert is being shown because it goes line by line. So first we'll resolve the alert. Once that is done, it will do the loop. Once that is done, it will continue and show my paragraph. So the loop is not yet executed. We don't see any numbers back there. I click OK. We don't see the paragraph either. I click OK. No, I don't see the paragraph either. Ah, sorry guys, I wrote this inside the select. Okay, so the select opens and closes because inside the select I have my options, and I cannot have a paragraph inside a select, right? So my mistake. Okay, refresh. Hello world. I do not see the paragraph. I click OK. Now I can see the paragraph. So this is executed line by line. Now, the same way in which JavaScript executes the code line by line, my browser also finds elements line by line. Elements such as h1, such as select, such as paragraph. And these finding elements, okay, this execution line by line and discovering new elements as it's being rendered in the screen, that is something called the creation of the DOM, the document object model. Okay, so I'm gonna put here another, for example, h2, the document and basically the document object model is a list created by the browser with every single element created. Once this list is created, I can interact with the elements, right? With JavaScript, I can find a specific element, I can find a division, change their position, change their content, change their anything I want from that division. Okay? So many times when we are writing code, we do not want to execute our code right away. We want to wait for some kind of action to happen and then execute the code, right? That's when we use functions. Or sometimes we need to wait for the whole document to load so I can interact with an element. That is when I use window.onload. I wait for my window to load. So we have two different ways of using it. I have a function that will be executed whenever I need it, or I can have something called the window onload, which will wait for the whole document to load and then I can interact with an element. So let's continue with the second part, the second way of adding script to our document. That would be inside the head. So inside the head, I can also have script okay, and once I am in the head, basically what I want to do is to create variables in the head, create functions, add the window.onload, but I do not want to execute a document right on the head because as we said before, it's executed line by line, so I do not want to write anything in the head, right? Oh, sorry, by the way, this is supposed to be inside the head here. I do not want to write anything inside the head because inside the head I can only have either a meta tag or title tag or script tag or link tag for a CSS or style for styling. I cannot have a division, so I cannot do something like document dot write and then add a division in there. That would be wrong. Okay, so you do not want to use document.write inside the head. Document.write only works when you have script inside the body. So in the head, for example, we can create variables. I'm going to create a variable for name. Okay, so this is called initializing variables or declaring variables. Declare variable. Declaring a variable is just creating it. Variable name, that's it, it's created. But it's not initialized. Initializing a variable means actually giving it a value for the first time. Okay, so I'm gonna show the difference here. This is declaring a variable. Then I'm going to initialize it. Name equals John. So the first time when you declare a variable, you add the prefix var. Like that, you know that is the first time that this variable is being created. After that, you just assign a value that is initializing the variable, giving a value to the variable, and you can change this value as many times as you want after that. But you don't have to redeclare the variable. The variable is already declared once at the top. So for example, I'm going to declare some variables. Variable last name. Okay. And it is also possible that you declare a variable and you initialize it at the same time. Smith. Okay. So in the first one, in name, I'm just declaring the variable. For last name, I am declaring the variable and initializing it. Name, which was not initialized before, now I'm initializing with by giving the value John. Okay? So I can have some variables declared on my head. I'm not writing anything, right? And then I can call those variables later on inside my script, inside my body, and print them. For example, I want to print after my h2. I'm going to add another script. Type text JavaScript. Okay, and I can use that variable document dot write. I forgot to close this h2. Sorry. Document dot write name. Okay. Now, since the variable was already declared before, it already exists. Then I can use it further on in my code and write it. Okay? You have to keep in mind that things have an order. So what's executed first? First, line 10 is executed. First, my variable is declared. Then on line 12, the variable gets a value. And finally, on line 33, I am writing into the document that variable. That variable contains the value John, so it's going to print on the screen John. Hello world, blah blah blah, and I see John. The order is important. If I declare my variables after the document.write, it says undefined. That is because in line 30 I am trying to write a variable name which is not declared yet. It will be declared until line 34. So whenever you want to use a variable, make sure that it's been declared before and also initialized, right? Maybe I can declare the variable. I'm going to declare the variable up here. There, variable name, but it has no value. The value is acquired in line 35. So even if the variable name has been declared, if I try this now, it has not been initialized. So then here now, name and last name are being declared and also initialized, so I can use that variable with that specific value. Okay. Now, There is different type of variables. Okay, there are variables such as Smith and John, which are strings. Okay, strings, they have to start with quotes or double quotes and finish with quotes or double quotes. Both are correct. Quotes or double quotes are correct. And the reason why we use quotes or double quotes are for the following reason. We can have, for example, in French, l'école means school. L'école has a quote inside. If I use single quotes for l'école, for example, variable school FR, school French, l'école, and I start with single quotes, the program JavaScript understands that my string starts with the first double quote and finishes with the second double quote. So école now, it thinks that it's a variable. And then after I have another starting off a string. Right? So all of this is an error. If I want the quote to be part of my string, then I can exchange the first quote for double quotes. So now my string is inside double quotes and the first quote of l'école is part of the string. Okay? So that is why it's important to learn how to use quotes or single quotes. For example, I'm going to make a variable for a division an error somewhere. Okay, that works. Okay. So I'm going to have a variable called division, I don't know, red. Okay. I can actually store inside variables strings that are elements. So I'm going to have a division with a class. So in HTML, the way to write it will be division class equals red. Okay, with I don't know, something like that. If I want all of this to be part of my string, to be a string, then if I use double quotes, I have a problem because inside I also have double quotes. So in this case, it's better to use single quotes. So the best practice for JavaScript is to make your strings single quotes, because you're going to interact a lot with HTML elements that actually use double quotes. So in JavaScript, we can use single quotes while we leave the double quotes for the HTML. Now, we have other cases in which we have a combination of both. Single quotes and double quotes. For example, in French, I'm going to say l'école heard sing. And I want all of these to be part of my string. L'école heard sing. So variable school name FR. School name French equals to l'école heard sing. I want the double quotes of heard sing to be part of my string, and I also want the first quote of l'école to be part of my string. Right? So in this case, what I'm going to do, I'm going to choose single quotes And to make sure that all of them are part of the string, I can use something called escaping. And the way to escape a quote or special characters is by using a backslash. So backslash will make now the quote part of my string. So all of these are strings. Okay. I am going to make my H1, instead of introduction to JavaScript, I want to print the school name in French. Very well. Document script type text JavaScript. Document dot write school name French. So inside the H1, I am going to write the school name French, the variable which value is l'école Herzing. L'école Herzing, and I can see my quote, and I can see my double quotes as part of the string. If I didn't escape that first quote, again, JavaScript will think that my quote, my string is only L, is only one character. Then école is a variable, and Herzing is a second string, and there is one quote there lost. So there's an error. I do not see my title. Okay, so when we use quotes and double quotes together, we have to be careful and make sure that we're escaping the right characters. Now, note that when I'm going to write something, if I do not use the quotes, like in this case I'm using quotes and I'm using variables, quotes, variable. If I want to write the value of a variable, the variable should not be between quotes. A variable is just written the way it was declared, no quotes. If I add quotes to that variable, it's not a variable anymore. It's a string. So what I'm going to see on the screen, instead of l'école Herzing inside the H1, I'm going to see school underscore name underscore FR. Because I'm not printing the value of a variable, I am printing a string. Yeah. So a variable takes no quotes. A string takes quotes. Okay. There is something called concatenation. And concatenation, or to concatenate, means to add different values together. For example, I can concatenate, I can create a new variable, full name, which will be equal to the name plus the last name. Since both are strings, when I use the plus sign, I put them together. I concatenate the strings. Now, instead of using document.write name, I'm going to use document.write full name. and what I'm supposed to see on the screen is the name and the last name together. John Smith. But there is no space. That is because John is a string with no spaces, and Smith is also a string without spaces. If I want to add a space between them, it's very simple. I have many options. Either I add a space to John at the end of John, then I will see my space, or I add a space to Smith, again the space, or I concatenate inside the new string, the new chain of strings, a space. So I can combine variables plus a string plus another variable. And that is exactly what's happening here. In the loop, I am concatenating a string plus a variable plus another string. You see, every time you have a string, it starts with a quote, ends with a quote, plus another variable plus another string. And the result will write everything together. So here I added a character, which is a space. A space is also considered a character. And there's Smith. If I have numbers, for example, here I'm going to create variables with numbers. Okay, we have strings. Now I'm going to use numbers. For example, variable age. I'm going to make age equal to 30. And what I want to print is John Smith is 35 years old. So after last name, I'm going to add another string. Well, actually, not here. This is the full name. I'm going to go down to the document.write. Full name plus a space is space plus the variable age plus the last part of my string, years old. Okay, so this is going to show John Smith is, I need a space because John Smith after Smith there's no space, and even here I don't have a space. So full name after Smith there's no space. So John Smith space is space age, which is a number. Numbers do not take quotes, right? They're values already. A number is a value, so no quotes here. And also, since it's not a string, it doesn't have space, right? So no space. I have to add the space myself. 35 plus space years old. John Smith is 30 years old. Sorry, 30. Okay. So it means that when we concatenate variables with strings plus numbers plus another string, right? If I use the plus sign, I'm going to create a very long string. I'm going to concatenate them into a long string. On the other hand, if I have, for example, age, and then I add age I say, for example, age equals, I'm going to change the value of age, the 30 that I had before, plus 5. This plus now is not concatenating. Why? Because 30 and 5 are numbers. Since they are numbers, I'm going to have both values added. The plus used with numbers actually adds the value. So now age is no longer 30, because in line 24 age is equal to 35. So John Smith is 35 years old. In this example, then, we can see that even if a variable is already declared and initialized to 30, I can change the value at any time later on in my code. Okay? Once I change the value, whatever value I had before is lost, is gone. I cannot retrieve that value anymore. I'm overwriting it. Okay? So, plus sign with numbers, they add. Plus sign with strings, they concatenate. Plus sign with strings together with numbers, they also concatenate. For example, I'm going to convert age into a string. Okay? I'm going to declare a new variable, new age equals age, the old age, plus 5. Age is now a string, right? So the value of age is a string. A string plus 5, that is a number. New age should say now 305. I'm concatenating their values. So right down here, full name is new age. And now John Smith is 305 years old. When you have a plus sign, use combining strings and numbers, you concatenate. Many times, in many occasions, when you are going to be interacting with HTML and you're going to grab a value from an input, grab a value from an inner HTML, and that value is actually a number, and you want to use that value as a number, since you are taking it from the HTML, you're going to bring it as text. Even if it's only 2, 3, 100 with no text, you're going to bring it as a string. So then you have to convert that string into a number. Okay? So when you're dealing with numbers, we have two types of numbers. We have integers, which is, for example, whole numbers, like 30, right? And if you want to convert a string into an integer, there is something called parse int. So I'm gonna say age equals parse int age. This is a function. It's a built-in function already created in JavaScript, and it's going to convert the old value of age, which was 30, into an integer and save it inside age. So it's going to replace itself. You can make a variable equal itself with some modification, and you can then change the value of the same variable. Now age becomes a number, so this will change a string into an integer. Now since age at this point at line 24 now is an integer, is no longer a string, then age plus 5 will become 35 again, because it became a number. So John Smith is 35 years old again. Okay, there is another type of numbers. which are floats. And floats, basically, they use decimal points. So for example, I'm gonna create a variable money. And I'm going to write $105.57. Right? 105.57. Whenever you have decimal values, that is not an integer, it's a float. I'm going to add to my string down here. Now I'm going to say John Smith is 35 years old and has space plus money plus another string in his pocket. No, that's too much money for a pocket, in his wallet. Okay, John Smith is 35 years old and has this much money in his wallet. $105.7. I want to add a dollar sign to it. Well, just go back to my string. Before money, I add a dollar sign, right? And I will make it look like money, like dollars. What happens if a float is converted into an int? Well, it will remain the same value, but it will lose the decimals. So what I'm going to do up here, for example, is to change money equals parse int money. That will convert money, which used to be a float. So this is a float, and this will convert it into, this will change the float into a string, an integer. So when I print now money inside my document, right, I see only 105. I lost the decimals. So whenever you're doing calculations and you're calculating, I don't know, taxes, you're calculating like the speed of something and has decimals, make sure that you're using floats so you don't lose those decimals on during the calculation. Okay, so we're gonna stop this one here. I just want to finish with by showing you the third way of adding JavaScript into a document. And another way of adding JavaScript into a document is by having an external document. That one you want to add it in the head, script, type text JavaScript. And we need a source. Just like images have a source, a JavaScript also has a source, and that source should be the path towards our JavaScript file. So I'm gonna create a new file called functions.javascript. Okay, you can name your file whatever you want. I'm going to name it functions, and that file functions will be saved in the same folder. So this is language JavaScript. Save it as functions. That's it. By the way, you can write comments with double slash like this. That's a comment in one line. Or if you want to comment several lines together, you can use this syntax: slash star, and you close with // so these will comment several lines of code, while a single slash backslash will just comment one line, the rest is not commented. Then you will have to add back slash to every single line, or /* and finish with // and then after that is not commented. So having an external file is very useful because you can then create functions. You can create things that can be shared with other HTML pages. Okay, and it works the same way. If I have variables declared in the head, I can also declare them in my external file. And they will still be part of the document because in line 7 I am calling that external file. If I call the external file down on line 54, I have a problem again because my variables do not exist. So when I try to use full name and etc., that will not work, right? Because those variables are not declared until line 54, which is where I'm calling my functions file. So I want to make sure that functions or whatever JavaScript file is at the top of everything, so it can interact with the rest of my script. Now that I have another file, functions, and I have some of my variables declared here, I'm going to add also my strings in that external file. I'm going to add them here. Okay. Everything will interact together, will work, because they are positioned in the right order and they are all part of the same document. This is being called for externally, this is declaring the head, the rest happens in the body, but they're all inside the same HTML document. So now I can refresh my page and everything remains the same. Everything keeps on working the same way. Alright, so that was an introduction for JavaScript, how, when, and why to call an external JavaScript to write a script on the head or inside the body. Okay, we went through variables, the different type of variables, strings, numbers, which are divided into integers and floats. And next we are going to see the array type of variables.